Hello, hello. It's Stacy Portugal back with day 3 of 5 days to sugar freedom. I'm so happy you all are here. And I'm really excited because today we're going to start getting into the nitty-gritty of actual things that you can be doing that are going to help you become sugar-free. So, let's do a quick review. First off, of course, as you know, this is day 2, and I am it's day 3 actually, and I am your host, Stacy Portugal. And as many of you know, I am a board certified life coach. I specialize in health and wellness, and I am the creator of the 10-day detox and the Shake the Sugar lifestyle plan, which is a low-carb diet plan, and it's also a lifetime membership into a private Facebook group. All right, just another reminder that any decision that you make regarding your own health and wellness is completely yours and yours alone. And because I care about you, I want to make sure that you are checking with your doctor and doing anything you feel is appropriate before you start a diet plan. All right, let's dive in, guys. Once again, I want to alert you to a few housekeeping notes and something kind of exciting that I've decided to do for all of you who are registered for this program, 5 Days to Sugar Freedom. First off, if you would like the 5 video replays sent right to your inbox, please go ahead and check the comments right after this broadcast. I'm going to give you the link to register, and then you're on that list, and then you'll get an email on Friday with all the replays. Because I know sometimes it's a little hard to, make everything, so not to worry about that. Also, everyone who registers for this presentation, 5 Days to Sugar Freedom, will be eligible for a free 20-minute private coaching session with me. There are a few exclusions, but for most of you, that's not going to apply. And all the details are going to come in your next email. Also, these live webinars are about 30 minutes long. I want to alert you that there is a delay in your comments, so please don't be offended if I don't answer right away. If I don't answer on live, I will answer on replay, but I really want you to participate live, so I encourage you to do so. I will be on Facebook right after this presentation looking at all the comments, and hopefully I'll see your comments as we move forward. Also, please close your tabs. I know, by the very nature of our phones, our computers, our tablets, they are multitasking devices, and this is a situation in which you should really give yourself the gift of time. And it's a really good habit to give yourself the gift of time because you're giving yourself the gift of health. So make a little time and be in learning mode. Of course, participation is not required, but it is encouraged. So I really want people who are going to show up and participate because they are the people that really tend to get the best results. But of course, do whatever you are comfortable with. I want you to move forward and to learn in whatever way feels most comfortable to you. Also, for these 5 days, we're on day 3, I encourage you, show up in a new way. Be really curious. Hold yourself as powerful. You are a powerful woman, and you have made the decision to learn more about sugar addiction or dependency, and you really want to start making some change. And I want to congratulate you on this first step and encourage you to respect yourself. You're doing something awesome. In the next 5 days, we're going to be looking at sugar addiction from a brand new perspective. And I want you to be open to learning. I really, really encourage you to go through this process and participate so that I can help you. So I'm going to ask this question early on because I want you to go ahead and type it now. So, because I'm hoping to see some answers by the time I get off of this broadcast. As you guys know, these broadcasts are not very long, and no fluff here. I get right to the point. So my first question for you is, what's your most challenging sugar temptation? It could be specific foods. It could be a time of day. This might also relate a little bit to your homework on day 1, which was all about what your sugar story is. So go ahead and type that in. Tell me what your most challenging sugar temptation is. Let's also do a quick review. Hey, Claire, thanks for joining. So here's our quick review. We've discussed many factors that make us feel addicted or just out of control with sugar and carbs. This is the why. So it starts in your brain. So the feeling of addiction is not in your imagination. But I want to point out that while it does involve your brain, and it is somewhat of an addiction, we all know that. But the truth of the matter is it's not a drug or an alcohol addiction, and it's actually a lot easier to overcome. In fact, it's way easier than you think it is. And with the right guidance and the right support, you can overcome it super duper easy. Also, the why of sugar addiction actually starts with a chatter in your head. It's these thoughts that lead to our action. So you want to be still to really hear the chatter, because sometimes that chatter is sort of in your subconscious. But if you're a little more still, especially at the more challenging times, which is why I'm asking you, what your biggest sugar challenge is, I want you to be super aware of what that is, because it's at those times I want you to be really clear about what's going through your head. And then yesterday we talked about the idea of just asking yourself the right questions and how that can change the dialogue in your head. And eventually, if you keep asking the right questions, that dialogue becomes a habit. And then all of a sudden, the hippocampus and the caudate nucleus, they are going to remember new pleasant memories that don't involve destructive food. So this is a process. We're learning how our mind works, and we're learning how important awareness is. And if you're still and you can really listen to that voice in your head, you'll be able to create a new dialogue. And here's the thing too. From moment to moment, literally from second to second, there is a new dialogue in our head. Now, because we're focused on becoming sugar-free on this webinar, we're going to primarily focus on those particular situations. But feel free to notice the chatter in your head all day long. When you meet someone, you have all these back thoughts, and those back thoughts affect how you behave or even how you interact with that other person. Maybe every single day at the same time of day, it's late afternoon, you are feeling lonely or bored, or you're having a tough time with that transition from afternoon to the evening hours. And so you're looking for comfort, and there's something going on in your head. It might just be feelings of loneliness or boredom. And then all of a sudden, as you acknowledge those feelings, you may also be able to identify actual thoughts, or maybe not. But in that case, just being able to identify what's going on in your head, even if it is a feeling, is going to give you the power to change the habit. And then all of a sudden, that sugar addiction is no longer an addiction, because You're working diligently to change the dialogue in your head. And you start asking yourself the right questions, such as, let's say it's late afternoon, and I always use late afternoon or nighttime eating because it's so common. But let's say it's late afternoon and you're feeling kind of lonely and bored, like what I said, and you're moving toward the pantry and you're about to grab a bag of chips. What would happen if you intersected for just that moment, if you just paused and you said to yourself, are these bags of chips that I'm about to eat, is this going to help me get to my goal? Or you might say to yourself, am I willing to screw up another day? I've been sabotaging myself day after day in the late afternoon. Am I willing to keep doing this? How do I want to feel tomorrow? So you can sort of get an idea of all the questions that you can ask yourself that will suddenly change the dialogue in your head. And if you do it often enough, that addiction in your brain is gonna just turn off, guys. But of course, you have to be diligent. We also talked yesterday about food marketing and food labeling playing a role. And the idea that companies are simply trying to sell their products. They want them to taste good. They want to have the last word before you make that almighty purchasing decision. So that last word might be sugar-free. And then you're picking up those cookies, and now you're eating a whole bunch more fat than you thought you were. And now you're probably eating stuff with a whole bunch of artificial sweeteners that is setting you off just the same. So we have to be smarter consumers. So far, on days 1 and 2, your homework has been write down your sugar story that was on day 1. How does sugar and carbs affect you, and where are your challenges? The homework yesterday was to write down everything you're eating and drinking for the next 2 to 3 days so that you can get a reality check on where you're at and you can get tangible action steps from this workshop. So if you've been doing the homework, give me a like on this post. Today's topic, we're going to talk about the 3 top strategies to deal with your most challenging sugar temptations. And remember, I've asked you to write in the comments, what's your most challenging sugar temptation? Is it a particular food, or is it a time of day, or is it both? You can go ahead and write that in the comments. And we're going to talk about how much sugar is too much. So let's kind of talk about first, how much sugar is okay? Did you know that in the US, nearly 70% of adults are classified as either obese or overweight? An estimate of 2.6 million deaths worldwide, and that's 2.3% of the global burden of disease, are caused by obesity. Now, the recommended amount of sugar for women is 25 grams, which is just 9 teaspoons. But the average American consumes 19.5 teaspoons per day, which is actually 82 grams of sugar. Now, you might say to yourself, well, I don't eat sugar. I just eat regular food. I'm not eating candy bars all day. Why am I feeling addicted to sugar? I like chips. I like crackers. I eat bread. I eat condiments. But what you don't really realize is the sugar comes from everyday foods. Cereals, yogurts, pastas, crackers, breads, ice cream, cookies, fruits, peanut butter, and yes, I said fruits, you heard that correctly. Smoothies, fruit juices, candy. Sugar comes from all over the place. They even come from condiments like barbecue sauce, ketchup. There are even a few, not a lot, but there are a few mustards that have sugar. Yeah, you know what? Bottom line is, you may not mean to get a lot of sugar, but if you're not really aware of your own sugar consumption, and if you're not really aware of smart consumer habits, then you may be eating way more sugar than you think you are. Hey, Jamie. So that's why your homework yesterday, today, and tomorrow is to write down every single thing that you're eating. And what I'd love for you to do is private message me. And of course, I will not be using your name, but it'll give me something to help you with if you're on. And also it gives me something to, teach others with. It'll give me material. So sugars come from a lot of different sources. So I see some of you are able to put in the comments where your sugar struggles are. So let's see what everyone had to say. Claire says, anything available when I'm not feeling strong. Ooh, that's a good one, Claire. Do you find yourself like rummaging through cabinets, going in the freezer? And where is that food exactly coming from? Oh, and you say, and whatever I think I can get away with. Yes. Yes, I totally get that. When you're in the mood to just eat, it's like, especially when no one's around, you're just gonna eat. I know that feeling also, because when I'm in that kind of mood, the way I know that my eating is destructive is when I'm eating and nothing I eat satisfies me. It's like my stomach is just a bottomless pit. And yes, it's when I'm not feeling strong. Great observations. Jamie, you said if working around, I think you mean 3 to 4 p.m. in the afternoon, sometimes you feel you need or you want dessert. You try to reach for some pecans and a few dark chocolate chips. Jamie, does that work for you? Give me like a like on your comment. We can just keep it simple if you want. I'm wondering if you stop at the pecans and the few dark chocolate chips, because I think that's a good snack. But I'm wondering if that triggers you at all. And let's also kind of briefly talk about triggers. So here's the thing. Really understanding and identifying those foods and those situations that trigger you can make a really huge difference. And I want you guys to be able to identify that. We're going to talk about this a little bit more for your homework assignment. But it's really important that you understand what triggers you. So let's move forward. A lot of people ask me, oh, Jamie, you do feel satisfied. Awesome. That's a great snack. I love that you're bringing that up. That's great. And I want you to know the time around 3 to 4 in the afternoon, you can tell I'm using that example so much. The truth is, that's a very common time for people to eat. And I'll jump ahead a little bit, but a great strategy for late afternoon eating, is to plan a snack or a mini meal for that time of day. There is absolutely nothing wrong with it. And that's how you get through that time of day. Plus, it keeps you in control for dinner. But we're going to talk strategies as we progress in the next 2 days. So I do get the question, do artificial sweeteners count? And a lot of people who are going low carb feel that because they're avoiding sugar, they can eat things with artificial sweeteners. So they start buying things in the grocery that are, quote, sugar-free. But what they don't realize is that sugar-free items contain a lot of artificial sweeteners. and they actually can trigger you. And I'll tell you another thing is, it's not really talked about a lot because apparently the artificial sweetener industry has a lot of pull, a lot of lobbyists in Washington, D.C. They're very powerful, kind of like the NRA and the tobacco industry. But there are some studies that confirm that for a variety of reasons, artificial sweeteners can trigger your appetite for sugar, and they can actually also add weight onto you, probably for that reason. And there are some studies that say that artificial sweeteners can actually increase your blood sugar. And guys, your blood sugar is the very thing that matters when it comes to losing weight. If you're not keeping your blood sugar stable, you're not going to lose weight. Insulin, which is the hormone that's released in response to sugar, insulin is directly responsible for whether or not you're going to store fat or burn fat. So just a little FYI, a good thing for another discussion. All right, so now what I want you to do, you can see that's Sunday brunch at my house. I should have put in more sugary stuff, but you can't see there were bagels on the table, but that's a good one to see. But anyway, what's your most challenging sugar temptation? I want you to think about it. Some of you have already written in. If there's anyone else on, I want you to go ahead and put it in the comments. But as I've mentioned, yes, Jamie, that includes stevia. Yes, it does. It includes any artificial sweetener. Now, I'm not saying that you should never have it. I have sort of a guideline, and my guideline is at absolute most, I recommend my client to have no more than 3 packets worth of artificial sweetener per day. And to be honest, I even think that's a little high. So that's my 2 cents. Even if it's stevia or Truvia, even though they say that those are better and like the erythritol family is better than some of the other sweeteners, they're talking more for health because other sweeteners are becoming linked to chronic diseases. So I can't really go into that right now. I don't want to get too far off track, but you do want to minimize. If you're eating a lot of artificial sweetener, it could be the cause of your sugar craving. So that's a great question, Jamie. Okay, so your most challenging sugar temptation. I want to get into these 3 strategies for dealing with your most tempting sugar temptation. Typically, just like Jamie said, late afternoon or nighttime eating is super common. Also, restaurants or social settings are very common. Like for me, that was a huge trigger. I would be on my, diet all week long, and then on the weekends we'd go out to a restaurant and I would just eat whatever I wanted. Like I had completely forgotten that I was trying to lose weight. I had diet amnesia. And what happened was I was great for 5 days. I was completely off for 2 days. And you know what that equaled? Maintenance. That's what that equals. So you'll be chasing your tail for the rest of your life if you're doing that kind of stuff. You have to stay focused even in a restaurant or a social setting. Doesn't mean that you don't make room for some treats. So that's one of the skills that I teach in coaching. Anyway, another challenging sugar temptation for you might be just specific foods that you feel that you cannot live without. So what are the 3 strategies to overcome your most challenging sugar temptation? Number 1, first and foremost, is become a smarter consumer. Stick to whole foods as much as possible. But when you're not buying whole foods, 2 things that you need to look at before a purchase is, number 1, the nutrition label. You want to check the carb content. And it's hard for me to make a specific guideline on that because it's too complicated for me to address right now, but maybe we'll talk about that a little bit more on the last day when I see your trackers. And number two, you should be checking for the ingredients. And the reason that ingredients are important is if you see a mega list of ingredients and it's stuff that like you can't pronounce or it's not available in your grandma's kitchen, then it's probably a super processed food. And the more you get away from processed foods, the better off you'll be. It's a wonderful, wonderful start to finding sugar freedom. The second strategy, if you have any questions, guys, I want you to just type them in. The second strategy is identify your most challenging situations or foods, just like the question I just asked you. And here's the thing, especially for all of you watching on replay, it's really, really important that you understand where you're having trouble, because without identifying exactly what or when this is happening to you, you really cannot problem solve. So Claire, you're saying nighttime or late dessert, and that's also super, super common. So because you know that, you can start using these strategies. So you've identified the time of day. Then you also want to become a smart consumer. You don't want to keep stuff in your house that's a trigger for you. And here's the thing, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more tomorrow. I'll talk in a little bit more detail. But, you know, I realize that other people might be living in your house who like junk food. I get it. But there are ways that you can strategize that so that that food is out of your line of vision, or you're being a little bit more thoughtful about what you're purchasing and bringing into your home. So the third strategy is just all about implementing new strategies. It's all about saying to yourself, how can I plan for success? And some ideas are you can track and use your tracker as a planner, whether it's pen and paper or maybe you use an app like MyFitnessPal. I would always have healthy food at the ready, and I do suggest planning your meals as much as possible each and every day. And I know it sounds like a real like type A thing to do, but honestly, it makes a huge difference and it sets you up for success. It's kind of like if you were going to study for a big test, you would probably have some sort of approach so that you can be organized and cover all the subjects. You know, let's say you were taking the bar exam, or you had to sit and like take a test, you know, like for a licensure like I did for the BCC, or for, you know, whatever. You would make sure that you had a plan for every situation when it comes to your most difficult situations. And, you know, you would want to be as organized as possible. Another thing, another way to plan for success, and this, Claire, might be helpful for you, is to learn about substitutions. So how do you substitute, you know, so that you can get something sweet or savory, or just like a favorite comfort food? How can you substitute it so that you're still really satisfied, but it's maybe a much lower calorie, lower sugar, healthier portion of whatever it is? So that's a really good thing to think about also. Another new strategy is to really visualize. And I think we may have talked about this a little bit at the beginning, but visualization is so important. Let's say that you do have a habit of like picking out on the breadbasket every single time you go to a restaurant. It's become this habit. You're hippocampus, your cadet nucleus is really like chiming in there, and it remembers that delicious bread at your favorite restaurant. And you're really, really trying to cut down on sugar, which means cutting down on bread. And so you decide that you are going to have a plan. You're going to visualize carrying out this plan when you're sitting at that table. For example, you are going to have a plan. You're going to have a snack an hour before you are expected at that restaurant so that you are not hungry for that bread. Or if you don't feel like that's enough to get you away from the bread, maybe you're going to ask the waiter for a dinner salad as soon as you sit down. So while everyone is enjoying their bread, you're enjoying a dinner salad or even a side portion of like a vegetable. Sounds silly, but or a soup. These are great preludes to your dinner, a much healthier prelude than bread. Who eats bread before they sit down to dinner? That's crazy. I don't know where we came up with that in the restaurant industry, but it really makes no sense at all. If you're truly hungry, eat real food that has real value and real staying power. So visualize how you're going to handle that particular situation. Come up with a plan and then visualize implementing that plan. It should be an absolute no-brainer for you because you're planning for success. Doing anything else is not even a possibility. The other thing, the other new strategy, and we talked about this on this webinar, is just to be quiet and listen to the chatter in your head. Your story or dialogue in the moment may need some updating. So here's another example, going back to our breadbasket example. The chatter in your head, you're noticing when you sit down to a restaurant is, ooh, I can't wait for that bread. You know what? I can have just one piece. It's really no big deal. When you know realistically that one piece leads to like the whole breadbasket, or you know that that one piece leads you to ordering something that you don't want to order that's not on your plan. So you need to intercept that old dialogue and you need to create a new dialogue. And the only way for you to do that is to really listen to the chatter in your head. So for today, your homework is continue tracking everything that you eat and drink. You hopefully have done it yesterday, today, and tomorrow. If it's not perfect, don't worry about it. But I would love for you to send me either an email. You could do a snapshot, like a screenshot of MyFitnessPal for all 3 days or 2 days. You could also just take a photograph of your piece of paper and send it to me. I also want you to, especially those of you who are on replay, really truly identify your most challenging situations and foods. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about how to manage those situations. So think about that, and I want you to bring that to the call tomorrow. Now, tomorrow, of course, this is not a call, it's a webinar, but tomorrow our webinar is at 9 o'clock in the morning. That's Central Time. I'm here in Chicago. So we will be talking at 9 o'clock in the morning. Please make a note on your calendar. And the topic tomorrow will be foods that decrease your cravings, okay? Foods that decrease cravings. So we're going to talk about that, and that is going to really help you to find sugar freedom, because if you can't eat the sugary stuff, what else do you eat? And how do you stay satisfied? So we will cover all of that tomorrow. What to eat instead of sugar, and how to stay satisfied. And the thing is, you're going to want to stay satisfied, not just physically, but emotionally too. Okay, guys, I hope this was helpful for you. I hope that you have got